Well, hello, and a very warm welcome to yet another edition of Passions as we head up to our quite incredible 100 episodes. Never thought we'd ever get to anywhere near 100 episodes, but that's thank you to guests. And like the guest I've got today, who is James McComas. And without further ado, I'm going to just ask you to get straight into it, James. Tell us who you are and what your passion is.
Hi, Phil. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me. Congratulations on nearly making 100 shows. That's awesome. That's awesome. So thank you for the intro. Yes, my name is James McComas. I'm general manager of a property called Eastwell Manor down in Kent, just outside Ashford. And my passion is hospitality, and more specifically hotels. And everything about hotels, what we do, what we deliver, how they run. It's a passion that's kept my career going and growing for 25 odd years now.
Great. So tell us how it all started then, James. You don't have to tell us what you did at 4 years old at primary school. How did you get into it? Was it by accident or was it by design?
It was a little bit by accident. So I got into it when I was 15. I was having a bit of a panic, a bit of a teenage quarter life crisis, because I was just coming up to the point where schools were asking about A levels, and UCAS was coming onto the horizon, and what did I want to do with my life, and I didn't know, and up to that point I'd always wanted to go into the army. I was going to follow my father, and I decided that no, that wasn't for me. But what was I going to do? And I was having a chat with my father at the time, looking for some advice, and he said, well, look, why don't you go down the road to the Best Western and try your hand in the hotel? We've come back from holiday, you enjoyed yourself in the hotel, give it a whirl. And I thought, yeah, okay, I'll do that. So I solemnly marched on down to the Best Western, the Royal Chase Hotel in Shaftesbury in Dorset. And I walked in to the reception area, and I said, I'm looking for some work experience. Is there someone I can speak to, please? And the GM couple came out. It was a husband and wife sort of management couple at the time. They came out, and off the hoof, we had a conversation, and I lined up some work experience. And I absolutely loved it. I didn't know what to expect. And I wound up actually in the housekeeping department for a week, followed by meetings and events for a week. And I absolutely loved it. And what I fell in love with was the spirit of camaraderie and the spirit of teamwork. It wasn't so much the individual elements of the day-to-day, but it was that feeling of being part of something and working towards something. Even in housekeeping, just that sense of having teammates around you that you were working with and that you look forward to going to work with each morning. And I think it wasn't something I'd particularly come across at school. I didn't particularly enjoy myself at school, and so to find myself in that environment was amazing for me. And I decided there and then, by about halfway through my second week, I was like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be in hotels. I'm going to run hotels. And I'd watch Stuart and Jackie, the management couple, doing their rounds and talking to guests and engaging with the team and being in the kitchen trying the food. And I thought that looks pretty cool. That job looks awesome. I like that. So that's what I'm going to go and do. And so I solemnly went off and started working towards it. I picked up summertime roles at that hotel for a couple of years, progressed. I started my first paid role was as a kitchen porter, washing the dishes for the chef who was called Andrew, who was a great guy. And I moved through into food and beverage, started waiting tables, tended bar, and continued to enjoy myself. So by the time I got to university, I put myself through a hospitality and tourism degree at the University of Surrey, which I really loved. I spent almost all my time working rather than studying. and continue to love the operational element of it. I became a supervisor in the university bar. I started getting into cocktail mixing. I was very, very fortunate, and I was able to spend a year working in the United States as part of that degree. And it really cemented that initial sort of feeling of love and passion for the industry. And the more time I spent working sort of front of house and engaging with guests, and working alongside colleagues to deliver whatever it was we were delivering, the more wrapped up in it and the more enjoyment I got out of it. And so when I graduated in 2007, and I was flip-flopping at the time. I didn't know which way did I want to go in terms of my career. Did I want to go to a graduate place? Did I want to go straight into work or what? And at the bar, at the university bar, I happened to bump into a chap called Graham Ham, who was the regional vice president of human resources for Accor hotels in Australia and New Zealand. If ever there was a serendipitous moment. And I got chatting to him, and lo and behold, a couple of days later, he offered me a job in New Zealand. So this career path that I had started to love and started to enjoy was now beginning to take me around the world. I moved over to New Zealand with Accor hotels. I did all my junior management training over there with Novotels and McComas, courtesy of some great general managers who I really admired and look up to, and still look up to now, who I know are still active in the industry. And I spent 5 years over there developing myself, developing my management skills, and loving every moment of it. I met my wife over in New Zealand, or my now wife. She's not Kiwi, she's German. I got in her way, and rather than moving to Australia, which was her plan, I brought her back to England after 5 years to live in Reading, which was great. And it was when I moved back to the UK that I started to fall in love with country house hotels. That was my first exposure to the country house market at a property called Ancient Hall up near Oxford. And
is there a tendency, because it sounds very much like in in various different careers. I mean, hospitality is massive.
It
obviously.
is.
Was there an element of it which was maybe by accident again or by design, where you were trying out the different parts of it? Because I'd imagine it's very different in the kitchen than it running the bar, and very different in management versus doing the job. Were you always consciously dipping your toe in different pools to see which you like most?
Yeah, definitely. So while I didn't, my job role path, particularly in the junior level, tended to focus on food and beverage. But I always took the opportunities to explore, other areas, and just get involved and make myself involved in other areas of the industry and other areas of the property, and fundamentally I love learning, just love learning anything, and so I found within the hotel environment, as a junior member of the team, managers love it if you want to learn. They love it if you want to go and spend some time, even if you're a waiter. If you want to go and spend some time in reception, great. They love it. Come and spend some time in reception. Help us lug bags. Help the porter team. Just watch the concierge, see what he's doing with those bookings, or have your eyes on the receptionist as they check somebody in and pick stuff up. We love it because fundamentally, the core of hospitality and the core sort of skill set behind all of these roles, behind every department, is the ability to engage and the ability to be a nice person and be helpful. The technical skills behind it almost come secondarily to that. So if you can exhibit that wherever you are in the property, in whatever department, then you'll pick the rest up without any drama whatsoever.
And do you think that's actually something that, it's one of those things about, is that something you can learn, do you think, or is it the personality of the person? Do you spot people when you come into the business relatively early on and say, I think they've got a good chance of being good, particularly with, say, customers, for example? Is it a personality thing?
There's definitely an element of innate personality to it, some people are naturally more self-confident, some people are naturally more outgoing, but the great thing, I think, with hospitality is that regardless of that natural state that you might have, there is a role somewhere for you within the hospitality environment. No, not everybody and anybody is well suited to being, say, a concierge, where you're constantly dealing with, short duration interactions. Because if you need a little bit of time to warm up to a person and to engage, to feel comfortable in that environment, then a different role is going to suit you better. Maybe something like a spa therapist, where you have a longer duration of time with that person one-on-one to build a connection. But the great hospitaliers, for want of a better phrase, they're able to adapt that engagement style depending on who's in front of them, and anticipate the needs of the guest or their team member accordingly. So there is definitely an element of learning that side of it, and there's the old adage or cliche of stepping out on stage. When you step out from back of house to front of house and you're in the reception area, then it is a conscious decision to you may need to adapt the way you speak, or your body posture and things like that, given that environment and given those interactions that you're going to have. So there is definitely a learned skill behind it.
And how did you go on adapting into management? Because obviously you were a doer for quite a long time, and then all of a sudden you're having to manage people and lead people. Did you find that a natural progression, or have you got the scars?
There's always some scars. There's always some scars. If you find any senior manager or any senior leader who says that they don't have scars from learning that side, then they're probably lying. Because it's a process, and it's a development process. Nobody comes out a fully formed leader of people. Again, some people have more natural tendencies towards it and feel more comfortable putting themselves into that position. For me, it's always been the case, and my leadership style now sort of continues in this vein, is that I very much view myself as sort of a collaborative leader. I am working with people to deliver an outcome, to deliver a goal, to deliver a vision. I don't like thinking of the team as people who work for me, because I think that for me that creates distance, and it creates a barrier where it's not necessary. I work with people. I make sure I surround myself with people who have expertise where I'm lacking, by doing that, we create connections with our team members throughout, and you end up with a spider web effect, within your team, rather than, I don't know, a domino with people tied on at different places. A domino? No, a yo-yo, with people tied on at different places. So learning to lead people and learning to manage people is a constant evolution. People are unpredictable, fundamentally, guests and team members alike, and there will always be the person at some point where you think you've you've got them down and you think you understand it and you think you're making the right decision in, maybe it's the way you talk to them, maybe it's an action you implement, maybe it could be anything, and you get it wrong. And you chalk those up to learning experiences and you accept it. But by the time you get to even sort of mid-management, when you start looking back and you think about the number of people that you have had a direct impact on, whether intentionally or unintentionally, the mind absolutely boggles. And so you can't possibly get to that point and think that you've done every single one of those people the right thing every time. There will have been mistakes made. You will have learned lessons, and there will be scars as a result of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a management and senior management background, and every now and again you'll get an email, because I'm old, obviously. So every now and again you'll get an email from somebody completely out the blue saying, just wanted to let you know I've just got a job as a general manager, and it hadn't been for you sitting down with me and putting me right and guiding me and mentoring me back in 1987. Well, not that long, but back in 2001, I would have never got here. And it's a very satisfying feeling when that happens.
100%. And I, one of my favorite memories in that ilk is about 2 years ago. I was at a meeting in London, and we'd gone up to what at the time was Galvanet Windows in the Park Lane Hilton. And we'd gone up there for a drink, and I was walking around talking to my industry colleague, and this voice came out from behind the back of house saying, "James, is that James McComas?" And I thought, oh God, I know that voice. and sure enough, I went to see who it was, and it was this young lady, May, who about 5 years before I had mentored through a Springboard program. And we'd never actually met in person. It had all been online. She had been over in the States at the time doing a placement. But the connection that had been built, and it kind of fizzled out just over time, as those things do, had meant so much more to her than I had actually appreciated. That she recognized my voice 5 years later, without seeing me, in a hotel in the middle of London, and it absolutely blew my mind. And those are the connections that we make. Those are the connections we try to make with as many people as possible, team members and guests alike.
Brilliant.
Drive hospitality, and that's what keeps me passionate.
And would you recommend traveling abroad and working overseas? Is that something? A lot of people talk about it, but then they've got to leave family and, make some big changes in their lives. But from my experience, it always seems to me, and I've done it myself, it seems to me that it's almost like a prerequisite. If you can do it, work abroad. Is that something you would find?
I would absolutely recommend it. Whether it's for a month, whether it's for a year, whether it's for 5 years, if you can find some time, find a way to get some time abroad, then it will absolutely have a positive impact on you, your abilities, your skill set, your leadership style, everything. Because what you can't really learn and what you can't really teach within the sort of the UK hospitality environment is another country's hospitality environment, and the culture that goes alongside it, and the challenges that country might face, whether that is physical challenges or cultural challenges or political challenges, whatever, and all that input arms you with more and more information, and therefore a greater ability to make decisions, a greater ability to empathize. It gives you a greater sense of patience. And it's a great leveler to be so far out of your comfort zone. And it will. I can be 99% sure for anybody that spending a little bit of time abroad will have a positive and beneficial impact on careers, on personality, on sense of self, on everything.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. You mentioned there about outside comfort zone. I must ask you, because you were obviously in the eye of the storm, as it were. We're recording this, best part of 2 or 3 years after the COVID situation. And you were obviously right bang in the middle of the challenges that created. I suppose that there's a few questions really, but how did you handle that? Did it come from nowhere and it was like, oh my God? And how did you handle it? And what were the biggest challenges?
So it was a very, very challenging time. I made it all the more challenging for myself by moving jobs in the middle of it. And so I actually took over Eastwell in the June of 2020, in the middle of lockdown 1. So sort of in the answer's kind of got two parts to it, I suppose. But initially, when you say, did it come out of nowhere? I remember quite vividly talking to my wife, and it was probably in early March. It was before the lockdowns had happened, certainly. Maybe it was the end of February, I don't know. I remember talking to my wife, and she was getting a little bit worried about it, because all the news about China and that it was beginning to spread, and I remember saying, like, it's not nothing's going to happen. Stop worrying. Yes, okay. So maybe it's going to be a nasty flu. Maybe it's going to be a nasty cold. Did I end up eating those words? But it did take. It took everybody by surprise, and during the early days of the lockdown, and immediately prior to, there was, God knows how many plans and emergency plans that were being rolled out across not just my hotel at the time, but hotels everywhere. We were trying to write rotas multiple times a day to account for the change in business pattern and the guidance that was there, that wasn't there. And I think the one thing that moving around a lot has taught me and has given me is that there's very little point in panicking. When you're faced with the unknown, all you can do is deal with what you do know. Yeah. And that might be a very small amount at the time. So you make a decision based on the information that you have. It was enormously frustrating as an operator to be constantly having to try and change your action plans. It was absolutely soul destroying to be sending team members home with no idea of, when will we be back, when will we reopen, when we just don't know. It was soul destroying to be sitting in the restaurant in my hotel at the time, calling brides for the duration of the summer, saying, look, I'm really sorry, but we don't know if we're going to be open, so your wedding isn't happening.
Oh yeah, that's the worst, isn't it?
And even by the time we got to lockdown 2, and I was at Eastwell by this point, and when the tier system was kicking off, and Kent, because we were the naughty boy of the whole country at this point, got put into our second lockdown on November the 2nd or November the 3rd. We were due to have a wedding on November the 4th. And the announcement came out at 9 o'clock on the evening. Boris Johnson put it out on his press release. And at 9:05 or whatever it was, I was on the phone to the bride saying, really sorry, this is a day before your wedding. It's heartbreaking to have to do to you. But we're shut. So very, very challenging time. But ultimately, all those decisions came down to just trying to make a decision based on the small amount of information you have, and then being prepared to adapt. From an opening perspective, the challenge, the real challenge for me came because I was trying to open a property I'd never seen operating. I was trying to open a property with a team I'd never met. You
So
know,
right from the start line. Yeah.
yeah, you know, I sat on a Zoom call with probably 80 team members in early June to say, this is really weird. I'm your new GM, and when eventually we reopen, I'm going to be really happy to meet you, and you know, we're gonna crack on, and we're gonna do some great things. But you know, to reopen into the environment that immediate post COVID was, with you know that huge surge of pent up demand, everybody out for a good time, then being driven by things like Eat Out to Help Out and all of that, from a position where, generally speaking, the industry thought we were going to be reopening to tumbleweed, and then do that with a team I'd never met in a hotel I'd never seen operating. You know, that was an enormous challenge for me, but one which, now I'm through the other side of it, absolutely loved.
Yeah, and it's the experience of it, isn't it? Nothing can ever take that away from you in terms of
Yeah,
that experience. You know,
yeah.
as I was saying, you intimated earlier about you like to learn and you like to learn from others. Do you have your own mentors, or I think you said there's still a few people? Do you turn to people? Do you think mentorship is valuable?
I absolutely
Yeah.
do. So I have a couple of more informal mentors. I've never been very good at being a formal mentee, and I think if I had the chance to go back and learn how to be a better mentee, I would, because there's definitely been some opportunities that I've not been able to, or that I haven't made the most out of, because I didn't really know how to be a mentee. You know, I didn't know what questions should I be asking, how do I approach this relationship. You know, I'm just sitting in front of this person I consider a bit of a god in hospitality, and I don't know what to say. So
Now, of course, you can just go on Chat GPT and say, "Give me some questions I can ask
yeah,
me."
so I tend to lean on more informal mentors, and you know, I'm very lucky in that the general managers who I worked with in the past, I'm still in touch with the vast majority of them, and you know, I can pick and choose when, if there's a challenge that I'm not sure how to approach, or I want a sounding board, I can move to them. I've got some industry colleagues. I make a lot of use of the Institute of Hospitality to provide me with a support network. So I tend to look that way, but absolutely, mentors are a great tool, and if you don't have one, then I would strongly suggest investigating.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. Okay, well, to close off then, what does the future look like, James? I'm asking you to be Nostradamus for a minute here. Probably more your future, your career. Where do you think it might go, might take you? And I suppose on the side of that, where do you think this is a big question. Where do you think hospitality might go in the future?
Oh
You know,
God.
with everything that's going on. I mean, it's been around. I mean, I'm from the travel industry myself. I worked for Thomas Cook for a number of years. But do you think it'll change the way that people go away and the way that people stay? Or I mean, Airbnb, of course, came along and changed it a bit. What
Yeah.
just your general thoughts on it?
Okay, gosh. Well, first off, my own career, you know what? I really don't know. I spent, how long did I spend? 18 years, roughly, intent on becoming a GM and having my own property, and working really, really hard towards that. And it informed most of my decisions. It informed the jobs I took, everything, where I lived, etc. And I've now been a GM for 8 years, and I still don't really know what next looks like. It doesn't have a specific shape or form or role. You know, my priorities now have shifted. So my career will look like working with organizations and people who share my values, and who share my passion. I'm not I'm not any longer chasing a specific role. I'm not going to sit here and tell you in 5 years I'm going to be an MD, because I'm just not sure if that's true. I do know I love the country house environment. I love the country house market. So I could well envisage it staying in that sort of sector of hotels. I think it will remain in hotels. I don't particularly see myself diversifying at this point. But it's anyone's guess. It depends on the opportunities that come around and when they come around. Is all I will say.
Yeah.
In terms of what hospitality's going to look like, well, we have some enormous challenges within the industry at the moment. Not least of all, a budget coming up, which is going to put some serious pressures on an already very, very hard environment, fiscally speaking. The industry, from a team perspective, the industry has been changing at an increasingly rapid pace over the last sort of 10 to 15 years, and I think we will see that continue. There's been a lot of focus coming on to things like team engagement, team wellness, team balance, and I think we will see that continue as the team employment market sort of becomes increasingly flexible. I think from a sort of a market and technology perspective, I think we're going to see an increase in sort of polarization or differentiation, particularly from a tech perspective. The advent of AI and the incorporation of things like that. I think we're going to see an increasing number of hotels either move all into that area and become, AI and robotics and tech driven, and then we'll see a large portion as well sort of retain the traditional sense, and while they might engage from an AI systems perspective, revenue management and that sort of thing. I think the fundamental sense of hospitality being a person-to-person experience will remain very, very strong for that end of it.
Well, whatever happens, and I know I completely threw you in the deep end. Sometimes people think that I do these interviews having got these 14 questions agreed in advance, but as you now know from your own
it's on the
home. Just go in there and figure it out, and I think you've answered that really, really well. And I'm sure whatever you do, you'll be really successful.
Well, thank you.
So thank you very much indeed. I would definitely, if you take a look at what's the website, James, for people to check out Eastwell.
So if you go to eastwellmanor.co.uk, that's the best website. You'll learn all about us, all about the Champneys brand, of which we're part of, and everything we've got to offer down here in rural Kent.
Yeah, and take a look at it. And if you're not dreaming about going, then there's probably something wrong with you. That's my personal opinion, because I know I am. So, James, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Really enjoyed talking to you, and thanks for that insight. Very, very useful. And I'll catch you again soon, and maybe see you at some point.
Lovely.
I come down.
It'd be great to see you down here, Phil.
Thanks, James. Take care. Bye for now.